I have been a full-time entrepreneur for a year now because I chose me. But if I hadn't chose me, my business wouldn't be where it was, and I wouldn't have actually had the time or energy to go and physically invest in Africa.
They say you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So if you want to grow as a multifamily investor, you have to spend more time with other multifamily investors. And an easy way to do that is to join our apartment investing mastermind group today. Just go to casmancapital.com and click on the mastermind button. Now, as a part of this group, you'll get access to expert trainings, group coaching calls, industry news and updates, as well as all of our webinars and workshops, including our 3-hour workshop on raising capital. Again, if you want to be around other multifamily investors that can help you scale your portfolio today and grow your network, make sure you're a part of the Apartment Investing Mastermind. Just go to casmancapital.com and click on the mastermind button today. Queen, how are you today?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Queen Blueprint with us today. Listen, I went over your bio at a very high level. Why don't you take 2 minutes and fill in some of those gaps?
Sure. So I really started my journey in entrepreneurship, being a hybrid entrepreneur. Actually, I was in corporate for about 7 years. I had that job. And while I was there, I said, you know what, I don't feel very fulfilled. And so, and to the side of that, I was also going through my own like financial turmoil. I was in about $50,000 worth of debt. So as I was getting out of this $50,000 worth of debt, I was sharing it on Instagram. I was sharing it on my social media. And so when I finally finished paying it off in about 2.5 years, I went on social media and I celebrated. And everyone was like, oh my God, we're so proud of you. And then literally 6 months later, I purchased my first property here in the United States. And so they were like, okay, no, now we just need to know all the tea, sis. Like, how are you doing this? What are you doing? Is it magic? And I was like, no, it's not. It has a lot more to do with mindset. It has a lot more to do with budgeting and credit and all those cool things. And so they were like, could you teach me? And that's literally how my story started.
I love it. I love it. And created the Queen Blueprint based off of that, right? So, with your background, you talked about being in debt, $50,000, paying it off in 2.5 years, and then teaching other people how to do the same, but also how to start investing in real estate. Let's go back to that. What were some of the key principles that helped you pay off that 50K in 2.5 years?
Whew. Okay, so this is probably going to hurt some folks, but your mindset matters more than the money does. Okay? Because I was making the money. It's not like I wasn't making the money. But because I was going through a lot of family trauma, I was going through a lot at work, I just started spending money frivolously. I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to get on this flight today. Like, I don't care where I'm going, what I'm doing. I'm just going to get on the flight. I'm going to buy a whole new wardrobe. I'm going to flex for Instagram. I was having a great time. I was in my, early 20s. And so I was just walling out, post college. And so, and I did something else really did happen, to initiate that whole traumatic experience that I had. And so I was just in my emotions. And so when I finally realized what I was doing, it took me a little while. Now, I do have a bachelor's in psychology, so I will say I had a little bit of an upper hand in understanding what was going on. So when I finally figured out, I was like, wait, hold on. Why am I spending like this? Like, I know better. Why am I doing this? What is causing me to spend this way? And how can I stop it? And those were the 3 questions that I had to really ask myself and answer honestly in order for me to even begin the healing process and to realize and recognize what was happening within my finances. I always say that your finances are very symptomatic of what's happening in your real life, right? So once I went to therapy, I cleared up some things. I moved out of my family's house. My finances then adjusted to that, right? I was able to focus on paying off the debt, and that was my only goal. I was aggressively shoving all my money towards paying it off. And of course, I slipped. I am human, right? I'm not perfect, right? You will slip. You'll revert back a couple of times. But I kept going. And really what kept me going was putting those stops in place within my mindset to be like, do not spend $2,000 in one sitting again, because that was kind of scary. So, yes.
I love that you talked about, kind of your background in psychology and how that helped you recognize that, what, there's something going on that I need to actually dig deeper into, and taking that time to really understand what was going on with you mentally and in your environment allowed you to get a hold of, the circumstances and maybe change that. And I love the quote you just said, right? Your finances are systematic or symptomatic of what's happening in your life. And I think that's really powerful for people to think about and to be able to take ownership and take power back into their finances, because I think a lot of people will look at it and say, well, I'm just not making enough money, right? Like I need to make more money and that's why I can't pay it back. And that may not be the case, especially if you're out there spending money on, dinners and travel and so many other things. And it's great. Don't get me wrong. We all love those things. But you've got to have your priorities in order. So as you kind of coach and help other people go through that, what are some of the challenges you see that other people have, particularly those folks who maybe don't have that self-awareness or that realization that some of this is more psychological than just finances?
So the first thing I always do is help my clients to face their finances. Most of the time when people come to me, they haven't looked at their credit report at all, if in like the last 2 years, right? So I'm like, well, how are you going through life not knowing what's on your credit? Like, how is that even a thing in today's society and living in America, right? I'm like, maybe if you were living in like Kenya somewhere, possibly, right? But like you're in America, so you need to know what's on your credit, right? So I do what's called my intake process, and I have them face it. So we're going to review, what do you actually spend on a daily basis? And this is a judgment-free zone, right? So be honest. What do you spend on a daily basis? What do you spend on a weekly basis? What are you spending it on, right? What do you pay for monthly, reoccurring, without debt? And then what are you actually paying for within your debt, and why? Like, how did you even get into this debt in the first place? Right? Because understanding the why, then we can adjust what the how is to get out of it. Right? And so it's really just that. And most of the time, a lot of the times when clients come to me, some of them are just so impressed with the initial intake process. They're like, oh my God, I didn't even know I was spending on this. I didn't even know this was going on my credit. I had no idea that this extra like sometimes it's like an alias, and they have someone else's information on their credit report and they had no idea. So that initial just facing your finances is super important. So when you are even going towards financial healing, financial wellness, doing investing, the first step is to find out what is actually your financial situation right now in the current present tense.
No, it makes a lot of sense, right? Understanding what your current financial situation is. And most people don't do that. You talked about the credit report. Talk to me more about kind of the other aspects of that. I know a lot of people may not, especially younger folks, right? If you're, recent college grad, maybe you haven't thought about, your net worth and what assets and liabilities you have. But talk to us about kind of that next phase of facing your finances, taking a look at the income that you have coming in and your overall net worth and assets.
Yeah, absolutely. So once you finish like taking stock, and let's say you are in what I call the building phase, right? So you don't have to worry about debt. You don't have any debt to worry about. You have pretty decent credits, and you have decent income, right? So the first thing that I would say is that build, right? We think that credit reports and credit scores your credit score is the only important factor. It's not. What's actually reporting on your credit report is important, right? You need what's called a thick profile, and that means diversity, right? So when you're in the building stage, don't be afraid to get into debt. And I know it's counterintuitive. I know it's counterintuitive. You're like, but you just told me not to be in debt. But when you are actually able to manage your debt, and lenders see that you can manage smaller debt, they are more inclined to say, oh, I trust you with this $200,000 house, this $200,000 mortgage, this $400,000 mortgage, because you can handle a $60,000, combined credit, limit, or you can handle an auto loan, right? Which I like to call is like the mini mortgage, because it's structured exactly like a mortgage, right? And even if you're like, okay, but I don't want to necessarily do this on my personal side, I want to do this on the business side, most lenders still take a peek at your personal. They want to make sure that you are not at risk for defaulting on the loan, right? So you want to make sure that you have a nice, diverse profile. Don't just rely on, well, I paid off my student loan and I have credit cards. Like, get a personal loan, pay off the personal loan, right? And do it strategically, right? Don't just like, okay, I got the loan and then tomorrow you're paying it off. Like, that does not show that you are actually financially responsible. Your credit report, I want you to think of it as like when you're in school, it's like your progress report. So this is like your life progress report. This is showing them that you are financially well. This is showing them that you are financially balanced and you know how to take care of your money. And it's the only thing that they have proof of to take a look at besides your statements, right? But a lot of lenders, sometimes they don't go through your entire statement. They'll go through your taxes. So, preliminarily, I would say to use what I like to call the CBT method. Look at your credit, look at your budget, and look at your taxes. And see where you can improve and build upon those things and do it strategically. And if you are not in a position to know that type of information, then it's time to reach out to a professional who can.
Makes a lot of sense. And understanding what's on your credit report allows you to then build, right? To focus on what's next, where can you invest, where can you grow? Let's talk about that for you, right? After paying off your debt, you went to build and you invested in a property in the United States. And I know you did some other properties too, which I want to get to in a moment. But talk to us about that transition, going from, having your W-2 job, getting your debt cleared off, and then making that first investment.
So I would like to issue a warning to all new to all new homeowners. After I finished paying off the debt and I was like, oh, I'm free. And I bought the house. And that was a very stressful experience as well. Like a lot of people, and I went to them like with my lender actually said I had the best financial profile she had ever seen. Right. And I still had problems within my process, but it was on the seller side. Right. So I like to say like the homeownership process is as much a emotional process as it is a financial process. So you do want to make sure that you have a very solid support system and a really good team. Right. But the warning is after you finish doing all these things and buying this house, now you are going to get what I like to call swipe happy. And so I just started swiping my credit card on everything. I was like, oh, I need new floors. Oh, I need new this. I need a whole new living room. And I didn't pace myself, right? I didn't pace well. And so that's something that I would definitely say. You don't have to do everything at one time. It is a myth. You don't have to do it, right? You can slowly build up your new house. Now, if you're doing it on the investor side, obviously, if you're doing like, a short-term rental or something like that, you're going to need to do everything at one time. But if this is your first time and it's your first house and you're really like getting your feet wet, I would just take take your time.
No need to swipe that card and buy every single thing your heart desires, right? You can pace yourself and build. Well, talk to us about kind of the investment. I know that you've got something globally as well, and talk to me about just how you manage that.
Yes. So I ended up meeting this amazing guy, and he's a businessman, and he's been bringing Black-owned businesses over to the continent and Africa, the continent, guys. For over a decade. And so I actually had in 2020, I was still doing like a YouTube series and I interviewed him. And halfway through the interview, I was like, I completely forgot that it was an interview because I was so engrossed in what he was saying. And I'm like, what? How do you bring businesses over to the continent? And so he asked me, he said, we need people like you who talk about money mindset and things like that, because a lot of Africans are actually like selling their ancestral land to buy like vehicles and things and then like losing everything. And I was like, yeah, that sounds great. But what I want to talk to you about is how do I get over there and buy some properties? Cause like, that's what I don't know about the investing part. How do I help them in that way? And so he told me about, how I could purchase property over there as a foreigner. And so in 2022, last year, I actually sold my condo that I had for 3 years. I used the equity that was supercharged by the pandemic. Other people say they hate the pandemic. I say a little bit of thank you. Because usually condos do not appreciate the way that my condo did. And so I was able to sell it and take those proceeds and go over to Africa and purchase an eighth of an acre, 10 minutes from the beach in Diani, in Diani Beach. And it is going to be a 4-bedroom, 4-bath duplex, and it is going to absolutely be a short-term rental or even a midterm rental. I haven't decided if I want to add that in, but definitely a short-term rental. This past tourist season, and they're still kind of in the thick of it now. And when this is being recorded, it's November, guys. So they're still in the thick of their peak season, and my business partner, who he's now my business partner, so he's in Kenya. He moved to Kenya earlier this year, and he told me that they're completely sold out. They've been sold out for months. And so I was like, yes, I made the right decision to purchase in this particular country, in this particular market. And so I'm really looking forward to next year going into tourist season and being able to flourish and get my investment and immediately back.
You said a lot of great things, right? So just to play that back, you talked about having your own home, right? You had your condo that appreciated greatly. You interviewed this individual, learned about the land opportunity in Africa, and decided, you know what, that seems really appealing. Let's see if I can get a part of that. Sold your condo, took some of those proceeds and invested in land in Guyana Beach, and ended up partnering with this individual to run it. Can you talk to us a little more about just, you know, going from the conversation and this idea of you can invest in another country to actually purchasing land in Kenya? Because I think that's one of those things that sounds good, but to actually go and do that, whether it be international investing, and, you know, I'm not sure how frequently you go out to Kenya, but talk to us more about kind of that process and what helped you get comfortable with some of the key steps along the way.
So after first of all, I used to, the folks that I interviewed, I would probe them before. So I did a very strong research of him before he got on my show, because I'm very protective of my audience. So I already had that preliminary, research on him. And then talking to him, I asked specific questions that I, as a homeowner here in the US, would want to know there. And so he was answering them well. And I was like, okay, let me see if I throw this little wrench in here. And I'm like, but I'm a foreigner. Like, don't I have to be a citizen? And he was like, not necessarily. And then he went into how that process is done. And so I was like, okay, you seem like you're pretty knowledgeable. So we started small, right? I didn't just jump into the international real estate game quickly. First, I gave him the first task, right? Can you actually register my Kenyan business? Like, is that a real thing? And can I do it from here in the States and not have to be on the continent? And he did. I received all of my documents. So I've had a registered Kenyan business since 2020, December 2020, actually. And then after that, we started to have other, deeper conversations about what I wanted to do with the property. How would we strategically get that done? And there are non-disclosures in place, so I can't speak exactly on everything in his process. But he was just very thorough in what he was saying to me. And I tell everyone, like all of my clients, my audience, like, ask questions, guys. And if you don't know the questions to ask, that's the first place to start. Like, going to classes, listening to master classes, listening to podcasts like this one, right? And figuring out what are the right questions to ask. Like, okay, is it legal to do this? What about taxes? What about if someone comes and tries to claim that this land is their land? Like, what do I do then? Is the title actually in my name? Is it in the business's name? Whose name is it in? Okay. When you're going international, these are things that you should know that is an automatic process here in the US. So we tend to not ask questions about them, except me, because I asked a million questions, ask my attorney and my realtor. And my lender. Okay. But, being very inquisitive in that way. And so I started that way. And then in 2021, I went on to the continent first. Still didn't buy anything. Okay. So I went to go see myself because one, I don't know about anyone else, but I'm a little paranoid, especially if I'm about to sit here because they do cash. There is no credit system there, right? It isn't as well, they have one, but it's not as sophisticated as ours, right? And so I was like, if I send you $30,000, like what's about to happen with my money? Like where's the security in that? And so I said, you know what, let me go and actually experience it for myself. So I went in 2021 and fell in love with Deani Beach. It is absolutely beautiful. I can definitely see why so many tourists do go there. I did research on the actual market. So guys, market research is super important. So I fact checked what he said to me because he did tell me, yeah, this is a great tourist market and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, well, that's great. Let me go do my own research and see if it is. And Americans are actually the #1 tourist for Diani Beach in Kenya. So I was like, ooh, well, I know if we go there, there's money there because we don't go places where there isn't any. And so there was that. There's also the fact that there are so many expats in Diani Beach, whether that be the second highest tourist is Europeans. So, and they're also following that trend with being expats. There are a lot of American expats there, and there are a lot of European expats there. So I said, okay, well, there's some outside money already in here, right? So this seems like a really good market. It's beautiful. It's picturesque, enough for you to entice someone to go over there. And that's really what I looked at beforehand. And then in 2022, September, I bought one.
I love it. And one, congratulations on that. And I appreciate kind of the thorough explanation of your process. And I think there are a lot of insights for our listeners to process, whether you're investing in the United States, whether you're investing cross country, whether you're investing globally. You gave a lot of things that are really reputable and I think applicable to this situation. So first and foremost, vet whoever you're looking to partner with. Vet them, ask them questions, see how knowledgeable they are on the situation. Because whoever you partner with, that's the most important thing, because you are not going to know everything. You talked about maybe you don't know the right questions to ask. Certainly educate yourself, but even still, you're not going to know every single question to ask. So the best thing you can do is align yourself with someone who is thoroughly knowledgeable of every step, and they will anticipate and know kind of what to do. So as those things come up, they're already prepared. So I think vetting that individual is absolutely key. You talked about making sure you understood some of the key things: legality, taxes, title, ownership. You started getting even more of the day-to-day, right? Lending. What are the lending options there? Management, operations. So all these things are really important. So you want to make sure that you're asking questions. You understand how these things are going to work. You talked about making a trip out there. Before you purchase anything, go visit it for yourself. Meet with the locals, ask questions, see what you see. Do you get a good vibe? Do you feel good about it, right? If you are not familiar with an area, just get a little more comfortable, right? Because sometimes it's not that it's the country or it's the state or the city, but it's pockets, it's little sub-markets within every single market. And I like to think of it this way. Every market, or I should say most markets, have parts that are desirable and parts that are less desirable. So if you're not local, you may not know which areas are more desirable. So you just need to understand that. And it needs to match your business plan. If you're doing Airbnb or short-term rentals, well, it has to be desirable. It's got to be appealing, and you have to know who your audience is. And for you, if the #1 tourists are going to be Americans, well, that's going to make it a little bit easier for you because now you know what they need to see. You know what they're looking for. You know their expectations. If #2 are Europeans, same thing. So that makes it make more sense to go out there and execute, because the audience or the customers that you're going to be serving, these guests are Americans and Europeans, and they're going to be, pretty similar to what we see here in the United States. So great questions, great insights about how to think about this and how to pace yourself. Kind of going back, we talk about pacing. You talk about interviewing this individual, back in 2020. It wasn't until 2021 that you went out there, you got your business set up, you had all those things established. So once you got out there and you visited, at that point, you were finally ready to move forward with the investment. So I appreciate you breaking that down and sharing that. How excited are you for this opportunity, this venture, and do you plan on doing more investments like this moving forward?
Oh my gosh. Yes, I'm so excited. I'm so excited. I love the fact that as an African American, I can go onto the motherland, as they say, and say, like, I own a piece of this. Like, this is mine. Like, I am here, right? I definitely and also just contributing to their economy as well. I feel like other races and cultures are, in Africa, and we are not as prevalent as we should be. And so being a part of that movement and showing other, Black African Americans here that we can do it, that we do have enough, finances to stretch and for it to be a mutually beneficial exchange. But I am definitely going to be investing more and investing more international. The original thought process for going international actually was to go to Barbados, which is where my family is from. And when I first started looking into it in 2016, I was like, this is expensive. It's like the Caribbean is like 2 times America. I need to slow my roll. And so when I heard about Kenya and how much more affordable it is and how big the profit margin is, I said, okay, so here's my way in. I can go and do the lower end in terms of the profitability there, right? Purchase that, make the money, and then have it cash flowing so that I can actually purchase the property that I want in the Caribbean and retire there. And so, yes, I definitely plan on investing more international. And I also intend to come back to America and invest here as well, because there are some markets that I'd love to get back into. New Jersey, where my condo was, I'd love to get back into there. It's a great state to make some money. Texas, New York, like there are some places, Florida, there are some places that I still have on my radar that I'd like to invest here as well. And I think the duality is what's important. Like, you don't want all your eggs in one basket, right? We saw with the pandemic, if one market goes down, right? If I don't have all my properties here and I have properties in other markets that are still flourishing because Kenya made money in the pandemic, okay? Because people like me were getting on planes and finding my way there. And so you want to make sure that you don't have all your eggs in your basket and you really diversify your real estate portfolio to other countries so that you don't have to worry too much.
Yeah, there's a lot to like. And I think one thing that stands out is, now more than ever, it is easier to be a global investor for the everyday person,
Yeah.
right? I mean, if you go back 20 years ago, that probably meant getting on a plane at least 4 or 5 times a year. So it wasn't really logical. But with the rise of the internet, social media, just, the different resources,
Automated
the
system.
systems, everything automated,
Yes.
all that makes it so much easier. So it's definitely worth looking into for anyone who's looking to scale and maybe diversify globally, particularly if you have any kind of competitive advantage where maybe you have a partnership or you have some market knowledge or you're from one of those countries. So all these things could add up and could be a nice opportunity. For anyone who is thinking about this, give me one, I guess, lesson learned or surprise or something that you didn't expect, or even just a misnomer about investing globally or specifically investing in Africa.
This is a good one. So typically here in the US, how we approach investments and real estate is like you go and get a real estate professional. So you typically go and talk to an agent in the market, right? Don't do that when you go international. They will see you're a foreigner, you coming from a mile away, and what they do is they call it the foreigner tax. So they charge you upwards of 3 times, sometimes 5 times the amount of what it actually is, just because you have no idea, right? So what you really want to do is contact an attorney first, okay? That is what you want to do in an international market. You want to make sure that you because sometimes the lawyers are a little sus as well. So you want to make sure that they work with foreigners and they have a reputation of doing well with foreigners. This you can check through just asking them for references and having you actually call, their references. How we did it in Kenya is my business partner he already had the connections, but then when he actually moved over there, he got much better connections, right? And so having at least someone over there, whether it's you or if you send someone there to like kind of weed it out and vet it out, you want to make sure that you connect with an attorney first, and they will send you to the more reputable real estate agent or a diasporan who's doing work there because they know. And so yeah, I would say that that's my nugget.
That's great. That's a great nugget, right? Understanding kind of how the local, I'm not gonna say politics, but just like as a foreigner, who do you want to really engage with, who's on your side and who's going to take advantage of you. So understanding how to navigate that is definitely a key aspect. I want to go back to kind of our earlier conversation, right? We're at the end of the year. A lot of people are thinking about 2024, getting started on the right foot. You've got the Queen Blueprint. What are some tips or ideas that people need to think about to set themselves up for 2024 to be their best year financially ever?
Yeah, so right now is a really good time to assess your financial behaviors and how you make financial decisions, because you can literally see 12 months of proof of how you're spending your money, right? So a really good thing to do, and I know this is old school, but I promise it works. Print out all of your statements for the last 12 months, okay? And I mean print them. I don't mean download them
Don't
on
just
your computer.
download.
I mean print them, okay? There is something about connecting with things in the physical tense that your brain actually processes the information better, okay? So you're going to print out your statements. You're going to take highlighters and highlight things that you actually needed that you'd paid for, and highlight things that you wanted that you paid for. And if you can remember in those moments why you purchased, I want you to make a nice ongoing list of why you purchased them, okay? In those moments, were you upset? Were you extremely happy? Were you experiencing sorrow? Did you just get a promotion or something and you felt like, I'm entitled to this, I'm going to spend this? What were the actual emotions that caused you to make those purchases? This is how you're going to map out things that you don't want to do in 2024 with your finances, right? Did I make a good investment? If I made a good investment, how well did it go and how did it go well? How can I duplicate that in 2024? If I made an investment and it was a bad investment, how did I feel? Did I have buyer's remorse? What can I do in 2024 to prevent that? Okay, but you're only going to see that if you print it out and actually map it out the last 12 months, what has gone on within your finances.
That's a phenomenal idea, great tip, and I think it's one that people should certainly implore, because having a general sense of what you're spending money on, printing it out, looking at it, and being honest with yourself emotionally and taking that psychological approach, it's going to help set you up for better habits going in 2024. Listen, if you want to learn more about the Queen Blueprint, you can check her out at the Queen Blueprint on social media, particularly Instagram. That's at the Queen Blueprint. You can also go to our website, moneymindsetclinic.com. Right now, we're going to go to our round of insights. You ready, Queen?
Oh, I'm ready.
All right. Give me a failure or an apparent failure that sets you up for later success.
Ooh, losing my job. Well, I kind of quiet quit it, to be honest. I got sick, and the job that I was with for 7 years actually was like, well, there's nothing that we can do. We want you to come back into the office regardless of how well you're doing remotely. And so I had to make the decision of whether or not I was going to allow them to bully me into it or to take matters into my own hands. So I have been a full-time entrepreneur for a year now. I chose me, but if I hadn't chose me, my business wouldn't be where it was, and I wouldn't have actually had the time or energy to go and physically invest in Africa.
Give me a digital or mobile resource you recommend for your business.
Ooh, for my business or just for business in general?
For your business or for other folks, something you like to recommend for other people?
I would say a digital resource. I would say there is a I'm blanking on the name, Monarch Money, which is what I actually use with my clients to assess their finances and really go through their financial behaviors. It's a really good financial budgeting, but it gives you a full profile. So you like automatically connect all of your accounts, your checking accounts, savings accounts, investment accounts, and it gives you a full financial overview. But it does something really unique that most other companies don't do. And it shows you your monthly reoccurring in a calendar format. So you can actually see how you're spending and pinpoint exactly what you should keep doing and what you should stop doing. So I would say Monarch Money is dope. I love them.
Give me the book you've recommended or gifted the most in the last year.
Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Absolutely, hands down. When I was in high school, and guys, I come from a public assistance family. I come from poverty. And when I read that book in high school, it really started to turn like my entire money mindset. And so I gift it. I, recommend it, highly recommend it. It's very good.
What's a daily habit that helps you stay focused on your goals?
Ooh, my to-do list. I feel like I'm lost if I don't have it. So I have what's called, it's Google Tasks. So you can get it on your phone and you can get it on your computer. And it is integrated with Gmail. And so when I need to read something or make sure that I read something, it helps me put to-dos. I can do subtasks in there. And it's like $5 and it's forever. So that's, yes, to-do list.
Give me your number one insight for great financial planning.
My number one insight is finances are not just about your cash flow. It's also about your mindset. So the things that are going on in your life that make you any extreme emotion that you may have, whether it's a really good emotion or if it's a really bad emotion, right? Like you're feeling depressed or you're sad or you're angry or you're triggered by something and you spend, those are the minute moments that really challenge whether you're going to be successful or you fail, right? So becoming emotionally intelligent and self-actualizing will help you to be very successful within your finances.
I love it. All right, so we're gonna switch gears here on this last question, lighten the mood. I know you from New York, you're have a lot of time there, but you're based in Orlando right now. We talked a lot about Kenya earlier, so I'm gonna let you pick the location, but tell me your favorite place to grab a bite to eat.
Senior Frogs. Senior Frogs. I love their salmon. Oh my goodness, it's to die for. It tastes amazing.
All right, that's not where I thought you were gonna go.
Very random, but yes.
Yes, okay, all right. So make sure we put that one on the list. Well, listen, Queen, we had a great conversation. I appreciate you sharing a little bit about your backstory, financially, being 50K in debt, paying it off in 2.5 years, buying your own home, and then making this international investment in Kenya. Just breaking down for us, one, how to take hold of our finances, but two, what to do to make that transition from, paying down our debt and then building, and making those investments that can help us elevate where we want to be financially. Also thinking about, what it takes to invest internationally. Make sure you've got the right people around you, make sure you're asking the right questions, and ultimately being able to go over there and confirming things with your eyes. So all great information, and appreciate all those insights that you shared. Again, if folks want to learn more about you or connect, they can go to Instagram or social media and connect with you at The Queen Blueprint. And they can also go to your website, moneymindsetclinic.com. Queen,
Yes.
Thanks again for coming on the show today, being a great guest, and we look forward to staying in touch with you.
Thank you so much for having me.